Pocket versus medium versus full strobe. What the heck is all the difference in the terms that we constantly hear in regards to simply flashes? Some people call them flashes, some people call them strobes. We have monolights, which actually there is a difference. So sometimes there are differences, sometimes there simply are not. Now, many of you out there would say that no pie. The difference is that a flash is small, like this little guy right here. But a strobe is something that's big, like this big guy right here. But I would say I beg to differ, my friends, because if you go onto B&H's website or any other retailer's website and you look, you will find many times that full strobes are named flashes. They call it the ProPhoto B1 flash, or they'll call it the ProPhoto B2 flash. There isn't a consistent naming system for whether something's a flash or whether it's a strobe. To be honest, they all do the exact same thing. They all put out white light for a split second. So why aren't they all called the exact same thing? I don't know. I don't know why we all can't be friends on this. I just think it's time to make up our own words, which is what we've done in the studio. For a long time, we've called these guys, and I don't know why we've called these guys this. Maybe I heard it from somewhere else. Maybe it's something that we actually came up with ourselves. I claim nothing as original anymore these days because who knows where I might have heard it from in the past or if we actually just were crazy enough to make it up on our own. But anyway, we call these little guys, these are pocket strobes. Now, pocket strobes are just small flashes, okay? So this, like the Photex Metros Plus, is a pocket strobe. All the little guys, the 580EXs, Nikon SB910s, Newers, Yongnuos, those are all pocket strobes. Okay, and then we have medium strobes, like for example, the ProPhoto B2 down there and this Bolt, those would be medium strobes. And then we have full strobes. Again, these are our own names because it's going to make it simple going through this course when I can reference pocket, medium, full. Okay, and you'll understand. This guy, this is the, I think I just broke it. This is the Einstein 640 watt second by Paul C. Buff. It's a fantastic, inexpensive studio strobe. So for a budget end, it's absolutely awesome. And then we have way wicked cool guys like the ProPhoto B1, which you can see down there, which that we would classify as a full strobe as well. So what the heck is the difference between pocket, medium, and full strobe? If you said pie, I think the difference is size. I would say, guys and gals, that you are 100% correct. The difference is indeed size. And more importantly, not just size, but also power, okay? So let's talk about this. A typical, the easiest way to distinguish these, and we've kind of separated it into three different classes, okay? So the easiest way to distinguish is by its typical power. A pocket strobe like this guy, the typical power for it is rated in guide numbers, okay? So with smaller flashes, they're typically measured in guide numbers, but the problem with guide numbers are that every manufacturer kind of has different ways of measuring them and sometimes different ways of presenting them, which makes them kind of unreliable. But here's the thing, from our testing, whether you're using a 580EX2, whether you're using a 600EX RT or a LumaPro, or, no, sorry, this isn't the LumaPro, this is the Photex, whether you're using the LumaPro or any other of these flashes, even the Chinese-made flashes, they all say guide numbers of between 50 and 70, and in practice, we got the exact same power reading out of every single one of them, okay? So they have very little difference in power, and the easy way to kind of think about it is that most of them are guide number 60s, or they're equivalent to around 50 watt seconds, plus or minus just a bit. We'll talk about watt seconds in just a moment. But what are the main pros of a pocket strobe? The pros obviously is its small size. This thing is far more portable than even a medium strobe, which is like twice as big, right? It's also less expensive, but we say less expensive to an extent, meaning that if we're simply buying one of these flashes, then it's less expensive than buying a bigger flash, right? One Photex Metros Plus at $400 is cheaper than a Bolt at $550 or whatever that costs. But it's cheaper to an extent because if we need the additional power, like let's say we need 5 times the power of this Photex Metros, buying 5 of these would cost you $2,000. Buying one Einstein, which is like 10 times the power, would cost you, well, it's more than 10 times the power, that would cost you like $600, okay? So it's cheaper to an extent, meaning that when we want the small form factor in a pocket strobe, that is less expensive. But if we're trying to use pocket strobes to match the power of a medium or of a full strobe, then it becomes expensive and it becomes cumbersome. All right, so the cons, it's low power output, relatively. We can still use these to overpower the sun, but compared to a medium or a full strobe, it's much, much less power. It's also expensive, like we said, and cumbersome when you are trying to get more power. Our favorites in the pocket strobe lineup is for full feature, we have the Photix Metros Plus. For manual side, we have the LumaPro LP180. Again, we'll talk about more of our favorite stuff later on. All right, so let's jump to the medium strobe. Now, a medium strobe, and by the way, sometimes people call pocket strobes flashes or speed lights. Those are other names for them. We call them strobes too, whatever you want to call them. Medium strobe, aka flash strobe, call it whatever the heck you want. I'm not going to argue on this. Tomato, tomato, tomato-y. Actually, tomato-y is an incorrect pronunciation, but tomato and tomato kind of work. Okay, so a typical power reading for a medium strobe is, again, sometimes they're measured in guide numbers for these because these are sort of in between pocket and full strobes. So sometimes the manufacturer will measure in guide number, sometimes they will measure in watt seconds, but they're roughly around a 260 to 360 guide number, and they are roughly around 250 watt seconds to around 300 watt seconds, okay? So a basic medium strobe is about 5 times as powerful when it's used at full power than a pocket strobe, which is a lot. That's a lot of power. So we have 5 times the power here, 4 to 5 times the power roughly. It's also smaller than a full strobe. So these are the pros of these medium strobes. They're smaller than full strobes, so they're still portable, but they're 4 to 5 times the power of a pocket strobe. They're still less expensive than full strobes as well. Those are the pros. Okay, so what are the cons of medium strobes? Well, medium strobes are larger than pocket strobes, which means that they are going to be a little more cumbersome to carry around. They're going to be a little bit less portable, but still very portable and more portable than a full strobe. They're also more expensive than pocket strobes, and that's only when we're talking about when you don't need the power, right? If you go and buy a medium strobe just for the sake of having it, but you don't really need the power, then you're paying more and you don't necessarily need it. But if you need the power, then it's considered a value because, again, like I said, the Bolt, 500, 600 bucks, whatever that price range is at, if you need the power there, then it's absolutely a value for what you're getting because you're getting 5 of these little guys, 4 to 5 of them. If you buy 4 to 5 of these, you're looking at like $1,600 to $2,000, right? Same thing with the ProPhoto B2. If you need the power, even at its professional price range of 2,200 bucks, that still beats carrying around 5 of these guys and trying to hook up 5 of these guys and use them as one single light. Okay, so in terms of basically the power to the ease of use and so forth, they're a great value when you need that power. Our 2 favorites. On the full feature side, our favorite is by far the ProPhoto B2 and its pack. It's absolutely fantastic. And it has, you know, high-speed sync, rear curtain sync, all the full feature functions that you would want. On the manual side, we have the Bolt VB22. This is also a basically rebrand. If you buy through B&H, it's the Bolt VB22, but it's also the Godox, it's also listed under Cheetah. They're all basically the same unit made by the same factory, just listed under different brands. So if you're in a different area or purchasing from somebody else, just look at the other brand name versions of that. But for the price and performance, it's absolutely fantastic. We're looking at like the ProPhoto B2 with a single head is $2,200, and with the VB22, it's 500 bucks with a battery pack. So you're looking at a pretty big difference in price range, but we'll talk about more of these flashes when we get into them to give you a better idea. Full strobes, aka a flash, a strobe, a monolight. Now there is a difference in why something's called a monolight, and we'll get to that in just one second. But the pros to these guys, well, let's talk about their typical power. The typical power is measured now in watt seconds. When you get to full strobes, they're measured in watt seconds, which is why we gave you rough conversion numbers so you can get an idea. But we would measure anything, we would consider anything as a full strobe, just on our own terminology, anything that's above 500 watt seconds, which is roughly equivalent to 10 pocket strobes. So anything that's above that number, we would call basically a full strobe. So they're generally larger in size, like the ProPhoto B1, like the Einstein. Okay, this guy has 640 watt seconds, and every time I smack it, I always feel like I'm like banging around stuff. Einsteins, the policy-buff Einsteins are extremely inexpensive. Now that means that the build quality isn't fantastic on them, but for a starter studio strobe, you can't really beat it. These are like 600 bucks, and they're 640 watt seconds, or 12 to 13 pocket strobes basically built into one of these guys. So it's absolutely fantastic. Okay, so that's the pro. You have anywhere between 500 watt seconds all the way up to 3,000 plus watt seconds. So it could be anywhere between 10 to up to 60 times more powerful than a pocket strobe. When you count that, when you measure that into the value of these units, yes, they are more expensive, but the value is there because 10 of these guys is $4,000, okay? One of these guys is 650 bucks. One B1 is $2,000, or roughly around that range. So the value is still there. Okay, it's 2 to 10 times more powerful than medium strobes. So again, even when you compare price points, you need to factor that power in to that price point because there's still a value compared to the power that you're getting from them. What are the main cons? The units are fairly large, right? So these are large. This has a straight up plug that goes right into the wall, or you need a separate power pack for it. The cool thing about the Profoto B1s is that the power pack for a B1 is this little guy. This is the Profoto B1 power pack, and it can have like 250 full power recycles, I mean, in one single battery, and you can get multiple batteries and take them on set. They're fantastic and still quite portable for a full strobe. Okay, so each one of these is gonna have its own little version. Why are some called monolights? Well, because basically a monolight, the difference between a monolight versus a strobe and battery pack is that a monolight has all the power built into this. So all I need to do is plug this into some sort of power device, right? And it's its own self-contained flash unit. Same thing with the B1. That's a monolight because it's its self-contained flash unit. But something like the Profoto B2, that is not a monolight because it requires a battery pack, meaning that I can't just plug the flash head into the wall. It doesn't work that way. So that's the term monolight is used to reference those types of light. Monolights are lights that have all the power and everything built into one self-contained unit versus a battery pack strobe is one that you have to plug into a battery pack, okay? So, other cons, they are of course larger and less portable. Our favorites in the full strobe range is the Profoto B1. That's the one that you see right over here. It's a full featured strobe, which means you have TTL, rear curtain sync, you have all those full function, strobe functionality in it. It's $2,100 to start, and you also need the remote, which is another $400. So it's about $2,500 for the full kit. But it's fantastic and it's professional. We'll talk more about the differences, but they're incredibly easy to use and professionally reliable. Our favorite budget monolight is the one we mentioned earlier, the Einstein 640 watt second little guy right here. Because why? These are like $600, and for a studio strobe that you're using inside of the studio, you don't need it to be very portable. It's fantastic. It's absolutely awesome. It has a very fast T time. The T duration is incredibly quick. And also, if you're taking it on site, you can still get the Vagabonds, the batteries that Policy Buff has, and it's still a fairly inexpensive solution for a very powerful light. By the way, the B1s are listed at 500 watt seconds. These are 640 watt seconds. So anything above 500 we would call a full strobe. Between 250 to 300 watt seconds, or that guide number range, we'd call a medium strobe. And pocket strobes are right around that 50 watt second or 60 guide number range, and that's a pocket strobe. So hopefully this helps to kind of distinguish all of these different, strobes. The big difference here that we're talking about is simply power and size, okay? We have pocket, we have medium, we have full, and that's how we're gonna reference them throughout the entire course. So knowing that now, feel free to move to the next video.